Hello and welcome to Own Your Health with me, Katie Brindle. Today's episode is a Q&A, which is when you email in or write in or put in the comments below questions and we pick them up and I answer them. Now, today is in honour of Menopause Month, which we are in at the moment. So I want to talk to you about some alternatives to HRT, as well as answering a couple of other questions about Gua Sha as well. But before we get on to that, we've got some lovely comments, which I always like to share. Michelle, you say that Naked Pharmacy is a fantastic company. I agree. That's why we're partnering with them. And you love that Katie has had a discussion with Kevin. And Kevin is amazing. Very much a friend of the podcast. And we are very much a friend of the Naked Pharmacy. And just to say, if anyone is unfamiliar with the Naked Pharmacy, there's many things I love about that brand, but probably the main thing is that they are pharmacists. The clue is in the name. And like with me, you can send your questions in and they will answer them. And apparently there's 9 of them now because obviously their business has expanded since Kevin set it up. So they do tend to kind of get stuck into the questions. And I can honestly tell you that that's what happens over at Casa Brindle as well. So when people email into customer care, which they do all the time, these sort of questions will come up, sometimes quite obscure ones. And you sit there and you go, wow. And then sort of Catherine and I will just sort of sit there for ages. And if we're really, really stumped, which most of the time we're not, but on the rare occasion, I'll bring in one or more of my Chinese masters and we'll end up having a huge, great discussion about this before we send back the advice. And this is invaluable because it's free. Okay, and that's very much a kind of thing that creates the community. So the other great thing with the Naked Pharmacy is because they're pharmacists, you can send in with your question kind of if you're taking any Western medicine as well, because they can adjust what they're suggesting to you on the basis that you're already taking specific medicines. So it's a really, really useful thing, aside from the fact that the quality of their products are really good as well. So there we go. That's why I'm a big fan of Naked Pharmacy, and that's why we're partnering with them. Because just to say, I won't partner with anyone. We've been very specific about that. It was one of the kind of North Stars of this podcast when we started, because obviously it's good to partner with people, but I want to partner with people that I love and trust and believe in, so that even when the ad breaks come and normally think, oh God, an ad break, but actually there's good information there as well, so that we're not just peddling any old stuff, which kind of makes you feel a bit disgruntled. So we're not doing that. So Anna, she says, gratitude walking is a great technique. Thank you for sharing. Yes, that was something that I posted recently, which is basically a way to get gratitude moving in the body. Now, this episode is coming to you in autumn, and autumn in Chinese medicine is the season of metal, and the high energy vibration of metal is gratitude. So a way to do that is to just breathe when you're walking, which you're going to do anyway, but instead of just sort of mindlessly thinking about anything or being on your phone, that you breathe in. And as you breathe in, you feel grateful for the air coming into your body. And then as you breathe out, you let go. The breath out is a letting go exercise anyway. You are letting go. So letting go is the thing that autumn requires us to do. Just look at the leaves on the trees behind us. I'd like to talk to you about our 2 wonderful sponsors, because we don't take on anybody, you know, we're very picky here. So the first sponsor is the Naked Pharmacy. Now, the reason we love working with them so much is because on this podcast, we cover a wide range of health advice. I mean, from any given week, I'm going to be talking to you anything from shingles to sinusitis to eating chia seed rye bread in order to get good bowel movements in autumn, to decluttering, to a myriad of different things. And you need a partner that can kind of run with you at the same time. And the Naked Pharmacy is just that, because they have supplements for everything, which means whatever topic we're talking about, you can pop over to the Naked Pharmacy and they will have supplements to support this information. Now, not only that, they are very content rich. They have an actual pharmacy, which is what's so great. So just as we as a brand here on Own Your Health are very keen to answer all your questions and to keep the dialogue going with you, to offer the advice as much as just products themselves, the Naked Pharmacy are the same. So they have the products to match the content, but they also have the expertise as well. Now, they cover anything from stress to sleep to mood to energy to gut health to weight management, and pretty much everything else besides. So they're also going to give you the support as well. And they're offering us a 20% discount. If you use KT20 at checkout, which is at thenakedpharmacy.com, and you pop in Katie20 at checkout, you will get a 20% discount. So we're really picky about who we partner with, because I want to make sure that when I'm partnering and promoting something here to you, my audience, that I endorse it wholeheartedly, and I genuinely think it's in your interest to know about it. So let's talk about Meda. Now, Meda Skincare was set up in 2009 by Dr. Tina Meda. And the reason I love this brand so much is because it's really very much focused on finding holistic and natural solutions to your skincare. And she has a few really cool, iconic products. The first one, which is the one that she started with, which is this probiotic exfoliating Enzy peel mask. What it does is it works in conjunction with the microbiome on your skin. Now, this is really important because most of my audience is sort of 40 plus. So anyone that's 40 plus is likely to have put chemicals on their skin over the years, because that was the skincare that we were sort of introduced to in the bad old days of the 20th century. Now, that's not great, because when you strip the microbiome off your skin, what happens is then that gets replaced by a whole load of chemicals. And that's not great, because basically everything's stripped off and chemical dependent. So what happens with this Enzy peel mask is that it basically supports the health and diversity of your skin's beneficial bacteria. Now, this is important because I'm talking to you about this in the autumn. And autumn is very much a time of the metal element, which is to do with your lungs and your large intestine and the immune system. And microbiome, which sits on the surface of the skin and is not to be stripped off, has a direct relationship with the lungs, because the skin is the second lung. And the lungs, in turn, have the secondary organ of the large intestine, which is where vast quantities of this microbiome are hosted within the body. And this is all the good bacteria. This is all the good stuff. So we really don't want to be stripping this stuff out. So Meda has a brilliant quiz, which will help you establish exactly what it is that you need to be adding to your skincare routine. But the hero product that she launched with back in 2009, which sort of got her into the public space, is very much this Enzy peel mask, which is probably the thing that I use the most. And I really, really enjoy using, and you can really feel it sort of working into the skin. So a brilliant, brilliant brand. I really, really endorse this brand. I think it works very much as regular skincare, but also treatment skincare as well. And I'm all in favour of regulating the biome back into your skin if you've been using chemicals. Then Valerie, she says, watched your TikTok on what your nose means about you, and now I know why I spend like money and never run out, because obviously Valerie has what we call a money box nose. So when you've got big nostrils on your nose, it means you're really good at spending money. But if you've got really, really pronounced sides to the nose here, that actually means that you've got the ability to re-earn it. Probably everyone's now looking frantically in the mirror. There we go. So yes, that means you've got the ability to replenish funds, so that you can kind of replenish what you spend. So now we're going on to the main topic of today, and in honour of Menopause Month, which is where we are right now, we are going to talk today a lot about HRT. And is it the only answer to the menopause, which is, it's actually a question that came in actually anonymously, but we've actually had this question a lot. I think the reason why this question has come in so much is that you may or may not be aware that there's just been recently a panorama on the BBC, which came in, no doubt timed specifically for Menopause Month, where they were really, really doing a bit of an expose on HRT. And as a result, everybody has been going a bit like, oh my God, what should I be doing about my HRT? Now, the first thing to say to you before I go into anything about HRT is that you must consult your Western doctor about your HRT. I am not legally allowed to give you any advice about taking or not taking HRT. But what I am allowed to do is give you really good lifestyle advice about managing your menopause, because I think what happens is the menopause hits in various shapes and guises, and HRT is normally considered to be the only option. I think the problem that we need to be aware of, that I can help with, is that there are other ways which you can do as well as HRT, or if HRT is something which you can't have, because many people can't have it, they can't take it for various medical reasons, or they haven't got access to it because sometimes the supply's kind of dried up and there isn't enough of it, or they're not wanting to take it. Now in those areas, lifestyle can be extremely helpful. There are some other techniques which I can talk to you about right now, which are very easy ways to support the menopause. Now, the first thing is we just need to take a little bit of a step back before I go into the explanation to just say, why is it that the menopause has suddenly become such a big deal? Because I'm not saying that it hasn't been in the past, but the menopause has become absolutely stratospherically kind of like out there for women from the ages of 40 plus. And it's kind of like this kind of, it's like the sort of Titanic hitting an iceberg for all of us. And it's got a huge amount of negativity around it. And one of the main reasons which takes it firmly into lifestyle support is that what's happened in the last 100 years is that finally women have been liberated and we've been freed up and we've been allowed to start the equalization, and it is a process because we're still not there. And that has liberated us and taken us into the workforce. Now that's good, obviously, she says, doing her job right now. I'm all in favour. But the thing is that we needed to be aware that like no other time before, the female body is being put under huge amounts of pressure by having gone into the workforce. And also, you only need to look at various studies which show the women are still doing the lion's share of domestic duties as well. Okay, so there's a sort of general trend, which has sort of been, we were doing all the domestic duties, and then we've come out of that and gone into the workforce, but there's still an expectation that we're sort of doing the domestic duties. So there's a huge amount of pressure that we have to go through in order to kind of cover all the bases. Now that often results in a lot of stress. Most of us are also, aside from the feminist movement of us coming into the workplace and equalising by being able to have access to our own money and our own careers and our own opinions and all the rest of it, but also the pace of life. Whilst that movement has been taking place from roughly 100 years ago, the pace of life has increased at the same time. Okay, so what the net result of these two things happening in tandem is that we're all rushing around. We're all dealing with a lot of chronic stress. We're all having to kind of cover a lot of bases in order to kind of like make everything kind of like make the trains run on time. And then what happens is that chronic stress affects largely in Chinese medicine, the kidneys. Okay, the adrenal glands sit on the kidneys, which have got a big relationship to the stress response. But in our medicine, the kidneys are the organ. Okay, the adrenal glands very much sit within the kidney cortex in Chinese medicine. Okay, so we look at the organs. Now, here I go again, repeating the same basic mantra of how to own your health. There are 3 things you need to know to own your health, and your menopause is no exception. Okay, circulation of energy and blood needs to flow smoothly. The body needs to release what it no longer requires and to bring in the new fresh stuff. And you need to keep strong and balanced the 5 key organs, of which the kidney is one. Now, the kidney is being annihilated for the reasons I've just explained. Now, therefore, what happens is the kidney is responsible for very much connected to the stress response and this chronic stress that we're going through. It's very much the battery of your body, which basically gives you the actual ability to cope and to keep going with all of this workload and pressure that you have to do. And it is also responsible in Chinese medicine for the fertility systems of the body, and specifically around women, the 7-year cycle of life that we women go through every 7 years. Now that 7 years is crucial because it's controlling the functions of the body going through its fertile period where it starts to make life, which is what women's bodies do, but then coming out of that and transitioning like autumn, okay, out of the sort of the summer of that fertile period into the matriarch position, which is when we come out of the energy of our bodies being creating life force and life for others, and that process stops, and then that energy starts to go into a slightly different shift and a slightly different gear because that creative energy goes into ourselves. But what then happens is the effort of that process, which normally, because we weren't working and we weren't going through extreme stress, therefore there was a sort of gentler lifestyle which was more akin to the way the female body naturally worked, which enabled the kidneys to transition without collapsing. But what's happening at the moment is we are collapsing because there's simply not enough energy in the kidneys to take on another burden. There's just too much at stake. There's just too much going on. Not to mention many, many women now are also, because of the equalization process, having our children a bit later, which means by normal standards, the kidneys going through their 7-year cycle and transitioning out of motherhood and into menopause and into matriarch energy are then also having to work with small children, which are very, very demanding on our energies. Anyone that's had small children will be nodding in agreement going, they are quite knackering. Wonderful, but tiring. So in the olden days, women tended to have their children young. Now, please, anybody listening to this, I am absolutely not advocating any return back to the olden days where we had to stay at home and just have kids and just da. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just merely observing this movements that have happened in the last 100 years ultimately there's a little bit further to go. In this equalization process, we need to understand that we've got to strengthen and nourish our kidneys in order to give them the energy that they need in order to cope. Okay, so that we're not getting these debilitating symptoms, which is what's happening, which is why we're then off to the doctor asking for HRT. Okay, because the reality is that what we've got to do is just recognize that that's the case and go, it's okay, we're not yet fully equal. Okay, the working day has been created around masculine energy, yang energy, with breaks at lunchtime, which is where the yang break comes in because it's fire, okay? And then the breaks are in the evening time when you come home from work, and in those days, the woman would be doing everything at home and you'd just be relaxing, reading the newspaper. Now what's happening is the woman's body isn't being honoured in that time frame. So if you're going to work, the woman's body ideally needs a break in the middle of the afternoon. To be honest, all bodies do, but the women's bodies need it more because it's yin, not yang, okay? So therefore, the woman's body needs that rest in the middle of the afternoon, and the working day doesn't allow it. And then what happens is you push through it with caffeine and sugar and then the kidneys are getting more and more tired because that break in the afternoon is what nourishes the kidneys. It's a kidney break, because that's when the energy of the body is in the water element, and the water element is dominated by the kidneys, okay? And you're not getting it. And then you're likely to be coming home and then dealing with a whole load of domestic things. So you're not getting these little nuggets of rest, which is what the yin wants, tiny little breaks, which we don't get. So this isn't a cry to go back to the olden days, far from it. I'm very much a modern thinking person. All it is saying, look at the olden days and refresh what they did into the 21st century. Take the stuff that's relevant and bring it into the 21st century. So how do I do that? Because you're going to feel better. Right, one, again, for those of you that have binge listened to every episode, you're going to go, oh my God, she's going to say mindfulness bell again. And I'm like, yep, I am. They need to pay me. They don't. It's okay. Mindfulness bell. There's other apps as well, but I like this one. Okay, you can basically just have a bell that chimes every 15 minutes or half hour or hour on your phone. You can have a free bell. I don't like the free bell that much, so I've paid £2 for a bell that I like the sound of. And every 15 minutes, it chimes. And what it does is it gives me a yin break, and yin nourishes the kidneys. That's the first thing to do. And all you have to do is listen to the chime, and whatever you're doing, you've got to breathe anyway. Now, if you want a little advancement on that, what the visualization I like to do if you're suffering with the menopause is imagine that you've got two straws, one going up each nostril, and imagine that straw goes through the body and into the kidneys. And the kidneys are in the back, just there. Okay, so just imagine that it's like a hook going in, and imagine that breath is literally feeding the kidney, and that the kidney is plumping and being nourished, and then linger. So just imagine any toxins and stress and kind of any kind of gunk that's kind of gathering it's there is just being infused into the breath, and then breathe back out and just let it come back out again. And imagine kind of smoke coming out. You can even pull it out like this. This is when I do my Healing Circle subscription. We often do what I call pain pulling, but in this instance it's slightly more subtle than that. Just imagine that you're just pulling it out your nostrils as you're breathing out. It works. It's called placebo, but when we do these kind of healing exercises, you do fake it to make it. It really works. Okay, so let's just do that now actually as an exercise. Just breathe in with me and imagine those two straws going into your kidney. Okay, so breathe in. Imagine the kidney at the top of the breath, plump. Imagine this sort of transfusion, so all the good stuff's going in and all the bad stuff's coming out. And now breathe out through the nose and pull it. It's good, isn't it? And imagine you're literally pulling it out of the kidney. Imagine it's like a little thread and it's just coming out. It's like, ew, icky, 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 yuck, yuck, yuck. Let's just do it again. So just get rid of that. Right. Just clear it. You can go as well. You just want to clear the negativity. Right. And then do it again. Breathe into the hook. Sorry, I'm breathing out for those of you just on audio, and I'm just pulling it like a little string coming out my nose. Linger at the bottom of the breath. And then when you're lingering, just click it away. If you can't click your fingers, just flick it away like that. Just kind of flap your hands. And then you can breathe back in. You just need to do that like once or twice. You should, I hope, feel your kidneys go, oh my God, that feels amazing. Yes, I know. It's literally like breath bathing the body. Okay, it's really, really useful. It's free. Well, it's £2 if you want to play. We did actually work out what £2 was if you did it every 15 minutes, and it was just such a 0.00000. We gave up because it's basically nothing. Okay, so your kind of use of that is now, obviously you can't do all of this if you're in the middle of a meeting, but if you're at home on your own, it's a really useful technique. Okay, so breathing is really important. Now, once you've got that breath sorting out, now the next thing is we've got to nourish the body, and we've got to really get that circulation moving smoothly. We've got to be purging out all this kind of excess heat that starts to get gathered. Because the other thing about the menopause, aside from the whole feminist movement and the fact that everything goes at a million miles an hour these days, okay, is that when you have your periods, the body knows you've got this period. So what happens is the body will use empty spaces to dump things that it doesn't want to keep. This is this purge and nourish I talk about. So the uterus is such a space. So what happens is then when you get your period, the uterus just kind of flushes out. All of the negativity and all of the toxicity just goes out. Literally out with the bathwater. So out it all goes. And it's often quite painful if you've got a lot of heat and toxicity gathering in there. That often causes the big cramps because the body is really pushing everything out because it wants to get rid of it all. Okay. But then what happens is when that stops, the body stops using the uterus for that. So then, but nonetheless, all this heat and aggravation and stress and agitation and anger and bitterness and just okay, has to go somewhere else. Okay, so what often happens is the body will often push this stuff up and out. And then what it will use is the excretory function of the skin, because the skin is a big excretory organ in the body. So that is often why we end up with these hot flushes, because the body is just kind of like just dealing with the fact it's got to get rid of this stuff because it doesn't want it circulating around in the blood and the energy flows, because that's dangerous. So it sends it up and pushes it out through the chest, or through the armpits, up into the face, up and out. Okay, so that's another reason why we end up with the hot flushes. And depending on your body, it will also shove it into the empty spaces of your joints, because it's got to put it somewhere, and it's not going to put it around here, because this is like center command. It's your torso. This is where the organs are. And as I said, the top three things, okay, you've got to allow the organs to be efficient. And if the organs are getting congested with all this toxic waste, then you're going to feel even worse. So the body will use joint spaces. Okay, so that's why arthritis can come into the picture, and kind of joint pain. But it can also, depending on the body type, push the energy and the toxicity and the dryness and this heat that kind of gets exacerbated because it's not sort of being released properly, and the body can't function correctly, and the kidneys haven't got the energy flow properly, and they're the water element. So consequently, the water element is just kind of not happening properly. So what happens is you're a bit hot, but it's either coming out through the skin or it's going inwards, because if the body isn't strong enough to purge it outwards, because often our bodies by this point are quite weak, then the heat is just kind of settling inwards, and that's where the dry, brittle bones kind of factions can come in, and or the dry, brittle hair, or the dry skin, or the fact that your hair starts thinning because it's kind of singeing the kind of the hair bulbs and the hair follicles under the surface of the skin, and it's all getting caught. Okay. So this episode is brought to you by a superb brand, which I'm so excited to talk to you about. Now, remember, all of the brands that we talk about in the advertising space in Own Your Health are always brands that I want you to know about because I think they're good. And Liminal is no exception to this. Now, Liminal is founded by a friend of mine and a friend of the podcast, Rebecca Brown. Now, Rebecca Brown started life as a narrative researcher, and you're thinking, what on earth is that? And the clue is interesting into the creation of Liminal that came out of the back of it. So she spent her entire professional career before this listening to people's stories. And she started to work into the menopause time before the menopause sort of became the huge, great topic that it is now. So consequently, she was building up this huge, great research bank of other people's stories, which then coincided with her own journey going into the perimenopause, where slightly her professional world started to fall apart due to the perimenopausal symptoms. Now, as a result of her own personal story and also being a narrative researcher, she started to experiment, as we all do. She started to ask herself, what if I ... So she started to formulate all sorts of different formulations using all sorts of different herbal decoctions in order to create the brand that is now called Liminal. And the answer to this is that she's created not just a superb range of powders and supplements, which are very complex powders with multi ingredients all combined into them, apparently extraordinarily difficult to formulate. But in this community, there is also very much a community-based energy frequency of the sharing of knowledge, the sharing of stories, the sharing of understanding that when you're going through your menopausal symptoms, not only do you need physical and biological support, but you also need emotional and spiritual support as well. Now, this is something that is key to the heart of the Liminal brand. So over there is the most amazing community of men and women who are discussing all sorts of treatment modalities which have worked for them or their partners. So Liminal is a brand that I would very much encourage you to pop over to the website. So that is our wonderful sponsor and friend of the podcast today. And now we shall go back into the rest of the podcast. So this is what's going on. So the breath is really, really good for dealing with all of this. But so is Gua Sha. Okay, now Gua Sha is something which I talk a lot about. Now, probably the best thing to start with the Gua Sha are these two tools here, which is the Sculptor and the Body Restorer. Now, the Sculptor is basically a very quick way to draw the heat out through the skin fast, because it's a big tool. Okay, so you can cover vast swathes of your body in 1 minute flat. Just literally put oil on and you just swathe this over the body, and the body will release it through the skin. So it will get that heat out of the way. And then I would go over the area of major heat, which tends to be from the heart and the chest and the liver. So you take the Body Restorer, you put oil on, and you go across the chest like this. This is also really good for helping you sleep. And then you go round the waist from the back to the front, clearing this congestion from where it's being caught up. Okay, it's getting caught up in the kidneys, it's getting caught up in the liver, it's getting caught up in the torso with the digestive system, caught up in the lungs, caught up in the heart. And you can use the excretory function of the skin in an organised fashion. With you doing it, it's very likely to flush up red. That's what you want it to do. Just let it settle down, and then you will find that you will no longer be getting these kind of violent kind of hot sweat attacks, and you're clearing out the heat and you're clearing out the toxicity by using the excretory function of the skin and the correct tool. Now, one more thing. Ellie, Katie, yes, Ellie, what are your top 3 to 5 tips for using your Gua Sha body sculptor to tone up? Right, well, so the Gua Sha body sculptor I've just shown you, funnily enough, that wasn't actually pre-organised. I have a little bench here just in front of the camera. Right, here's the sculptor. So let me just put the brand there. There's the Sculptor, there's the Body Restorer. Okay, now I use both of these tools with the Hey You body oil. Now, both of these tools basically work brilliantly well with Gua Sha. Now, Gua Sha is one of the most important self-healing techniques that you will ever need to know. The face Gua Sha revolution kind of came when I launched this jade crystal into the marketplace, and this was before lockdown. It then became a huge trend in lockdown, and everyone was doing it. So everyone's kind of got the gist of face Gua Sha, / they've vaguely heard of it, / they've seen them on sort of social media and things, because they're kind of everywhere. But what people haven't got the gist of is body Gua Sha. And yet body Gua Sha is one of the best healing modalities that you can give yourself. Traditionally, body Gua Sha has been used for thousands and thousands of years for clearing heat. Heat is very loosely translated as inflammation, very loosely. Please, any Western doctors, don't string me up for that one, but it's just kind of giving you a general kind of thing. We call it heat, okay? Now, inflammation is basically the underlying issue for basically pretty much every single modern day disease of chronic degenerative disease, which is mainly what we're dying of. Inflammation is right down there at the root. Okay, it's either the thing or it's one of the things. Okay, so we need to clear heat out of the body on a daily basis. Modern day living creates a vast amount of heat in our bodies. Okay, and you can use, as I've just said with the menopause, the excretory function of the skin and the semi-permeable membrane of the pores of the skin, which can sort of send things out and bring things in, by using the action of Gua Sha, which is you press and you stroke. So therefore you're creating a pressure onto the skin like that. It's going like this underneath. So it clears heat, which is its number one thing, which is really useful in itself. But it's also been used traditionally for coughs, for fevers, for colds, for inflammation, which I think I've just said. Yes, I have just said. For mastitis. It's really, really good for mastitis and pain. So what have we done today? We've talked a lot about the menopause, and we've done some really, really good information about body sculpting and Gua Sha, why you need it. And just to suffice to say, do please share this information with your friends and loved ones, because we give this so freely and we really want to get the word out there. And if you have any questions or any comments, or you want to know anything more, or you want to have the link for anything I've talked about, do please leave them in the comments below or email in ownyourhealth@katiebrindle.com. And I look forward to seeing you next time.